How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the riots that are currently happening in France, but more specifically in Paris. The media over here in the States, maybe even over there in Europe, will say it's about the rising gas prices and stuff like that. The gas is a part of this whole situation, but it is not the only reason. There's much more to it than the gas. But before I get into those other reasons, let's talk about the gas right quick so you kind of are on the same page with myself and others. Now, over the past 12 months, gas has risen in France by 14% for regular gas and 25% for diesel, a crazy amount of money. So much so that they're paying the equivalent of over $6 per gallon US for regular gas. Now, the reason why the taxes on gas have been raised so high, making the cost of gas really prohibitive for most people or a lot of people, is because the French President Emmanuel Macron has intentionally done that to discourage fossil fuel use. Okay, he wants you to ride the train, carpool, walk, use a bicycle, this, that, and the third to quote unquote fight climate change. Now, to be perfectly clear, most of the Western nations in the world, America included, if we reduce our CO2 emission to zero, it would not make that big of a dent, especially not France by itself. If France just cut out all the fossil fuel, went to, sticks and stones, no smoke, no fire, no cows farting, no nothing, it would not make a big dent in the whole world, because the biggest polluters are China and India. They have a combined 2.6 billion people in their countries. That is about 1/3 of all humanity. France does not have anywhere near that, but yet they're going to institute these rules to try and fight against climate change in their country. All that they're doing is hurting regular everyday people that can't get on the train, people that can't just walk around, use the bicycle, people that work out in the countryside or happen to live out there. How are they going to get from A to B? And a lot of these individuals don't have a whole lot of money. Just because France is a first world country does not mean that everybody is super rich and they have just endless amounts of money to be able to pay for $6 US equivalent in gas. The USA is the best country in the world with the most money per capita. However, what if gas all of a sudden was $6 a gallon? It'd be pandemonium in the streets. And that is a big part of why these riots are happening. However, it is not the only reason. There are many more reasons why people are out there protesting, rioting, whatever you want to call it. First of all, you have different sides of the political aisle that are represented out there. You got the far leftists who want to have socialism, a big social state, a redistribution of wealth, all kind of things. The typical things that Antifa will be fighting for over here, the far leftists over there want to fight for as well. Then you have the far right kind of people that are kind of way out there with the racism. These individuals are not the majority. They're just the extremes, as you would have over here in the States. The average person who really wants to support the yellow vest protest, and by the way, the whole thing with the yellow vest, every French person is required to have that in their car. In case your car break down and you got to stand outside, you're highly visible. So you got to have that in your car. So they're just using that to be seen during this particular riot, protest, whatever you want to call it. But I digress. The average person who represents those that are out there and who supports them, I think it was a poll of at least Parisians that said like 70% of people support this protest, even with the violence. They're supporting it because of all the other things that the French government has failed to do. You got ambulance workers out there supporting the protest. Maybe even the police themselves are supporting the protest. Emmanuel Macron is a failing president mostly because he's embraced globalism. That is the main thing. Now, I could have caught it from a mile away when he was running for president against, I think that was Marine Le Pen. When he was running for president, I could call it. I was like, this is a socialist guy, super stomp down liberal. Like, he's a stomp down liberal even in Europe, which is saying a lot because a guy like Trump would be considered like almost Hitler over there, as he is over here by some, but that's a different story. A leftist in Europe is a far leftist to a person like myself. A centrist is like a liberal. And somebody on the right, would be like a Rand Paul would be considered a far right kind of person over there. for the general public, in my humble opinion. If I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments. But globalism is the bigger reason why they're out there, because this is just one more thing. The whole thing with the vets, you got to have that in your car. You got to have all these refugees coming into the country, wrecking society, living off of benefits. And meanwhile, the average person is getting fleeced for all these different things. Raising taxes to pay for the illegal immigrants, the migrants, raising taxes because you don't want me to use my car. I got to have all these different things in my house, in my car, all kind of things people just don't like. And you're seeing, as a result, an outcry. Now, I have been told that riots and stuff like that in Paris aren't really that uncommon, but I think they're becoming more common with the current way things are going in Europe, especially Western Europe. Poland, places like that don't have these problems. Russia, no such problems. You're not gonna have a bunch of people to come over there and just do whatever they want to do to the French citizens, changing demographics of the country, destroying their way of life. They're not going to have that in those particular countries because they understand how to preserve that. In France, however, things are just kind of not going the right way. But unfortunately, the person who they voted in is not necessarily the cause of it, but he's furthering it. All right. If you already had a fire in your country and you bring in a guy that's an arsonist to try and put the fire out, you're not going to get the fire put out. You need to bring in the fireman to douse the flames. That is what has to happen. So, my heart goes out to all the people that are out there in France, all the ambulance workers, the first responders, regular everyday civilians. Hopefully you guys were able to come to a conclusion. Now, I did see some news that came out earlier today talking about, the news media, of course, they're going to say, the French government is back down, all this, that, and the third. All that happened is that the government has said we're going to delay the tax hike for 6 months. So they're still going to do the tax hike, and it's just going to be delayed. I think that's just a stalling tactic to try and get all the riots and whatnot under control. The Champs-Élysées is on fire. You got snipers on the roof. It's looking like London has fallen out there, quite literally. Not even really joking. It's really bad. Hundreds have been injured, arrested. It's really a mess. Now, hopefully nobody dies in this situation. I think somebody may have passed away. I heard that it was an old woman who got hit in the face with a tear gas canister and passed away. I'm not sure if that's true or false. And there may be more alleged death or confirmed deaths. If you know anything more about that, let me know in the comments. I'm just commenting on it from my side of things. But I want to hear you guys' thoughts on it, especially Europeans. If you're in France, if you're in UK, Germany, or some other country that's close to France, what do you think about this whole situation? Do you think that the riots are justified? Do you think that the far leftists are the ones that are just burning stuff? Because most of the time when you see people that are on the right or centrist, kind of politically agnostic people, when they protest, have riots, demonstrations, it's not any kind of real destruction. It's usually peaceful and they're trying to get their point across. When stuff starts catching on fire, that's a whole different element that's in there. But they're all having a yellow vest, so you can't really tell who's who. I'm not seeing the masked up Antifa people, at least in the footage that I've seen. But do you think that it's necessary? Do you think that what they said, talking about, we're going to delay the tax increase for 6 months, is that enough? What more needs to happen in France and in Western Europe right now where you're having problems economically, socially, etc.? Whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments.